Before I dive into my explanation of the connection between Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and John Milton's Paradise Lost, I think it's important that we ensure we're on the same page. Most of us probably think that we know what Frankenstein is about and the general plot. When I say Frankenstein, you probably think of something like this. When asked to describe this creature, you probably say something about a monster created via grave robbing and electricity who grunts and moans, shambles, and is afraid of fire. You may mention mob violence as a resolution. You probably envision a castle and a hunchbacked assistant.
I'm sure we'll get along splendidly. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I'm a rather brilliant surgeon. Perhaps I could help you with that hump.
What hump?
You would be wrong on all of these accounts. This representation of Frankenstein was created by the 1931 Universal Studios monster movie. This plot and the characters have only the most superficial connections to Mary Shelley's 1818 novel, Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus. Shelley, then aged 18, wrote Frankenstein as a result of a challenge between friends that they would all write a ghost story. The novel is often considered the first science fiction novel and one of the cornerstones of the horror genre as we know it today. Frankenstein is a frame story, meaning it is a story within a story. The frame for our main plot is that of a sailor on an expedition to the North Pole who is writing home to his sister in England. On his journey, he encounters a man adrift on an iceberg. This man is Victor Frankenstein, notably not a doctor, who recounts his tale of how he ended up alone in the Arctic. As a note, for the rest of this video, I'm going to call Victor Frankenstein by his first name to avoid any confusion, as many of us instinctively associate Frankenstein with his creation. Victor discovered the secret to bestowing life to an inanimate body. He never reveals his secret for this, but it's implied to be a chemical process, as Victor's specialty is chemistry. He creates a body from pieces of other creatures, not only human and not only from graves, and attempts to make it as beautiful as possible. In order to get the proportions right, the body is about 8 foot tall, so the height is something our modern retellings get right. However, this is all taking place not in a castle, but in his apartment near his university campus. Upon animation, his creation is hideous, with yellow eyes and skin described as mummy-like. We're never given much more description than this beyond that he is hideous and terrifying. Victor's not overjoyed like in the film.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive!
But he flees in terror, and the creation, who is never given a name in the story, wanders into the world without any knowledge of himself. The creature is repeatedly rejected by society for being so terrifyingly ugly. Women faint when they see him, and even when he saves a drowning girl, which is the complete opposite of the 1931 movie, where the creature's actions result in a girl's death by drowning, he's shot because the girl's companion fears the creature based on his appearance. He's not shambling or dumb, but highly intelligent and has physical abilities that far outshine even the most athletic human. The creature wanders for 2 years, becoming well-spoken and competently educated, but eventually becomes so angry with his continued rejection by humanity when all he wanted was love that he murders Victor's 6-year-old brother as revenge upon his creator for making and abandoning him. Victor is immediately aware that his creation is responsible for the murder and finds and confronts the creature in the mountains. The creature demands that Victor craft him a wife so that he will no longer be alone. And promises that once he has another creature to love and be loved by who will not fear him, that he'll leave human society behind forever. Victor initially promises to build the creature a wife in order to save his family and friends, but eventually realizes that there is no guarantee that this new creature will not be even more violent than his initial creation, and abandons his work. The creature becomes so enraged by this that he kills everyone Victor loves, and then Victor chases him to the ends of the earth in an attempt to kill him, eventually ending up on an iceberg in the Arctic. Victor dies in the care of our explorer, and the creature boards the ship to mourn, before dramatically exiting with the promise that he will now go kill himself as his revenge is complete. Not quite what you were expecting, was it? So, beyond the obvious that both these books are about a creator bestowing life to a creation, How does Frankenstein relate to Paradise Lost? Let's organize this conversation from the most surface level to the deeper resemblances. There are two versions of Frankenstein. The novel was first published in 1818. This version was released anonymously in 3 volumes. It began with an epigraph, meaning a short quotation or pithy sentence placed at the commencement of a work, a chapter, etc., to indicate the leading idea or sentiment. The epigraph was a section from Paradise Lost, Book 10, lines 743 through 745, which reads, "Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay to mold me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me?" This line is initially spoken by Adam to God, but in this context is intended to invoke the creature speaking to Victor. The second edition of Frankenstein was published in 1831, and this is the text that most publishers choose to print today. This version was published under Shelley's name, and there are a few textual differences. The first, and maybe most obvious difference, is that the epigraph is missing, and instead we have a preface written by Shelley herself. In the second paragraph of her introduction, she mentions that Paradise Lost, among other named works, has been an inspiration to her, and that she considers Milton's work to be one of the highest specimens of poetry. The novel itself also has explicit mentions to Paradise Lost within the plot. The creature finds a few books in the woods, and one of them happens to be Paradise Lost. Here's a reading from the New York Public Library.
But Paradise Lost excited different and far deeper emotions. I read it, as I had read the other volumes which had fallen into my hands, as a true history. It moved every feeling of wonder and awe that the picture of an omnipotent God warring with his creatures was capable of exciting. Like Adam, I was apparently united by no link to any other being in existence. But his state was far different from mine in every other respect. He had come forth from the hands of God, a perfect creature, happy and prosperous, guarded by the especial care of his Creator. He was allowed to converse with and acquire knowledge from beings of a superior nature. But I was wretched, helpless, and alone. Many times I considered Satan as the fitter emblem of my condition, for often, like him, when I viewed the bliss of my protectors, the bitter gall of envy rose within me.
After reading Paradise Lost, the creature uses this as a framing narrative for his own life. He says just a few pages later, "I endeavored to crush these fears, and to fortify myself for the trial which a few months ago I resolved to undergo. And sometimes I allowed my thoughts, unchecked by reason, to ramble in the fields of paradise, and dared to fancy amiable and lovely creatures sympathizing with my feelings and cheering my gloom. Their angelic countenances breathed smiles of consolation. But it was all a dream. No Eve soothed my sorrows nor shared my thoughts. I was alone. I remembered Adam's supplication to his Creator, but where was mine? He had abandoned me, and in the bitterness of my heart, I cursed him." So if the creature is a stand-in for Adam or Satan, is Victor, his Creator, a stand-in for God? No. Shelley leans into this obvious comparison as a way to show us how inferior man is to God. Anytime Victor has any sort of emotional stress or fear, he falls into a months-long illness and fever where he is overcome by delirium. His creation falls through no fault or action of his own, but is doomed from the start. In fact, both the creature and Victor feel that they have fallen into hell. Victor says, "I bore a hell within me which nothing could extinguish," while the creature says, "I, like the archfiend, bore a hell within me." While the creature may initially want to connect with Adam, by the time he meets Victor again, he says, "Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous." This shows that he's come to identify with Satan as time goes on. In Paradise Lost, Satan does not see himself as a villain. He sees himself as a freedom fighter who is seeking justified revenge. The creature also sees himself as the hero of his narrative, while Victor is the villain in his eyes. Near the end of the narrative, the creature recalls his actions and says, "Evil thenceforth became my good," which is a near direct quote from Paradise Lost, Book 4, where Satan says, "All good is to me lost. Evil, be thou my good." The creature is constructing his sense of self based around the narrative of Paradise Lost. This begs the question, if he had been exposed to other literature, would he have been different? I don't think so, because beyond the creature crafting himself in parallel to the character of Satan, Shelley also draws comparisons between Satan and the creature. Both of these characters are the most articulate characters within their narrative. They are described as having a ghastly, monstrous, devilish external appearance and are often referred to as the Fiend, which reflects their moral compass but not their cognitive abilities. They're both smooth talkers who try to convince those around them to join their way of thinking. However, by the nature of these works, we understand that both of their wars are already lost. Neither one of these characters have a chance to get what they truly want. Shelley has additional, narrower scope parallels and references to Paradise Lost within her story that one may overlook if they're not familiar with Paradise Lost. I don't have the time to go into all of them, but one of my favorites is when the creature first becomes aware of his appearance. He does so by staring into a pond. I'd admired the perfect forms of my cottagers, their grace, beauty, and delicate complexions, but how I was terrified when I viewed myself in a transparent pool. At first, I stared back, unable to believe that it was indeed I who was reflected in the mirror, and when I became fully convinced that I was in reality the monster that I am, I was filled with the bitterest sensations of despondence and mortification. Alas, I did not yet entirely know the fatal effects of this miserable deformity. This furthers our understanding of the creature as a twisted version of God's creations, and furthers our understanding of Victor's inferiority and inadequateness as a creator, because of the parallel nature of this scene with Eve's own discovery of her appearance in Book 4 of Paradise Lost. I thither went down with unexperienced thoughts, and laid me down on the green bank to look into the clear, smooth lake that to me seemed another sky. As I bent down to look, just opposite, a shape within the watery gleam appeared, bending to look on me. I started back, it started back, but pleased it returned as soon with answering looks of sympathy and love. There I had fixed mine eyes till now, and pined with vain desire. Eve is not terrified of her appearance. Instead, she openly admits that she would have stayed looking at her own image forever if the voice of God had not moved her along. The poor creature, however, is so ashamed and horrified of his outward appearance that it negatively impacts his sense of self and even his ability to be a moral being in the world. Frankenstein as we know it could not exist without Paradise Lost. Shelley might have been able to achieve the same effect more subtly, but I find something endearing and attractive about someone making one of their favorite works of literature such an open cornerstone in their own original work. Often, when we read a piece of fiction, the author will do their best to avoid mentioning any other works within their piece, to avoid placing the events too securely in our universe. By referencing a work that we are familiar with, Shelley is able to make the piece more believable. You could have encountered Victor. The creature could have been in the forest while you were hiking the other day and you didn't realize. Our more modern retellings might not be so clearly attached to the original narrative and therefore to Paradise Lost, but I still enjoy a good Frankenstein movie any day.